Ameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'uzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين آمنوا والذين هادوا والنصارى والصائبين من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر وعمل صالحا فلهم أجرهم عند ربهم ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. And the verse which I recited translates as follows: surely those who believe, in other words, Muslims, surely those who believe, and those who are Jews, and the Christians, and the Sabians, I'll come to Sabians later, whoever believes in Allah and the last day and does good, they have their reward from their Lord, and there is no fear for them, nor shall they grieve. And this is chapter 2, verse 62. And the second verse which I will recite is this: وَمَن يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَن يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. And that translates as follows: and whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be from among the losers. And this is chapter 3, verse 85. And the title of this khutbah is: are the early religions, the religions before Islam, accepted in Islam? I've discussed the issue of abrogation in the previous khutbahs. In the case of these two verses as well, which I've just recited, the same issue has been brought in by some commentators and scholars of the Quran. Now, apparently, and I stress apparently, the first verse says that Muslims, Jews, Christians, and it says Sabians. This was a small group of people whose religion was a mixture of the Jewish and Christian religions. So apparently the first verse says that all these people, Muslims, Jews, Christians, etc., and it goes on to say, in fact, anyone who believes in God, believes in Allah, and the last day, the day of judgment, and does good deeds, that person shall have reward from God, and there will be no fear for them, nor shall they grieve, which is an expression used in the Holy Quran, which you can take as meaning that they shall have no fear in the hereafter, that they didn't do their duty, nor will they have any feeling of grief that their lives were wasted. So this says this about all these different religions. The second verse, on the other hand, apparently seems to be clear that Islam is the only religion acceptable from anyone when they reach the hereafter, and that anyone following another religion will be a loser of God's favor in the hereafter. And this has led some Islamic scholars to believe that the second verse has cancelled the first verse. But I've been mentioning the apparent meaning of these verses. Now, those meanings are in fact a misunderstanding, and the two verses are not contradicting each other, as I will show later on. But before I show that, I would like to point out that it is absurd to say that the second verse has cancelled the first. Abrogation or cancellation of one verse by another, even if it was true, can only apply to commands and not principles. For example, many Muslim scholars say that when the command was revealed that Muslims must fast, that command gave each Muslim the choice of either fasting or feeding a poor person instead of fasting. And they say then that later on fasting was made compulsory by another verse which abrogated this first one. Now, while that is not correct, at least it's not a completely absurd and ridiculous point of view. Another example is that many Muslim scholars also say that at first the Holy Quran told Muslims to make wills before their death for the inheritance of their properties. And the verse in question is chapter 2, verse 180. But they say that it was later on that the Holy Quran fixed the shares of the heirs, and therefore that abrogated the earlier verse which required Muslims to make a will. Now, this opinion is wrong, but at least it cannot be called absurd and ridiculous. But to say about a principle which Allah revealed, to say that Allah then later overturned that principle, is indeed ridiculous and senseless. Now, in the case that we are discussing, what abrogation means is that first Allah revealed that He will accept as true the faith of anyone who believes in Allah and the last day and does good, whether he is a Muslim or Jew or Christian. So Allah first revealed that. And then according to those who believe in abrogation, Allah then overturned this by revealing that He will only accept the faith of a Muslim as being the true faith in the hereafter. Now, the strange thing is that the first verse was revealed in Medina in the year 2 of the Hijrah, and the second verse was also revealed in Medina in the year 3 of the Hijrah. And both verses were proclaimed and declared to the same group of people living in Arabia. Now, no change had taken place in the condition of all these people in a period of 1 year, so that the principle applying to them needed to be completely overturned. And if you accept that the second verse abrogated the first, it would mean that just 1 year earlier, certain groups had been promised entry into heaven by Allah, that anyone who believes in Allah and the last day. And 1 year later, they were denied, the same people were denied entry into heaven by Allah. Now that simply does not make any sense. The fact is that it is a misunderstanding to take the first verse as meaning that Muslims, Jews, Christians, and some others will be accepted by God as being on the right path because they claim to believe in God and the day of judgment and to do good deeds. What that verse is saying is that it is these principles that really matter, and that it is not by having the name Muslim or believer, Jew or Christian, that a person becomes approved of by Allah. And the people mentioned here belonging to different religions, those who believe, those who are Jews, those who are Christians, etc., they all actually accept these principles: belief in Allah, belief in the hereafter, and the doing of good deeds. But the question is, do they have in their minds the correct concept of these principles, and are they actually doing other things, believing in other things which go against these principles and are stopping them from acting on these principles. Now, this spiritual state, which is mentioned in this verse, that they shall have no fear, nor shall they grieve, that is a matter of degree. It is not something binary. Binary means that either you have it or you don't. It is not binary that either there is no fear for them, nor shall they grieve. Either it is or it isn't. It is a matter of degree. Therefore, what the verse means is that to whatever degree or to whatever extent someone follows these principles, belief in Allah, belief in the hereafter, and doing good deeds, regardless of whether he is a Muslim, Jew, or Christian, it is to that extent, the degree to which he did those things, it is to that extent that he reaches this state of inner contentment and acceptance by God. And the claim of the Holy Quran is that it presents these principles about God, hereafter, and good deeds. It presents them in their most perfect form. And it provides followers of the Holy Quran with a way to act on them to the highest degree. Now, if we take an example, a person may believe in God, yes. But on the other hand, he may have also added to that the belief that God has chosen his race or nation as his particular favorites above all other nations. So his capacity to deal justly with people of other nations and to do good towards them will be affected, it will be undermined, because he believes them to be a lesser creation of God than he himself. And that person's concept of the last day, hereafter, will be that I am going to be treated more mercifully and leniently by God at the end of life, in the next life, then God will treat people of other nations and races. So you taking another example, a person may believe in God, yes, and in the hereafter, but if he also believes that the burden of sins that he commits has been lifted from him by believing in the founder of his religion, and therefore his belief in the founder of his religion means that his sins are already forgiven, then his concept of akhirat, his concept of hereafter will be that he will not have to answer or account for any of his sins. That is will be his belief in the hereafter. So his belief in the hereafter will not be a deterrent to him in wrongdoing, and it will not be an incentive to him in doing good to others. So what this verse means is that whether you are a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian, what matters with God is not the name, but the underlying reality when you peel off the skin. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sent with the Quran in order to perfect this underlying reality of our belief in God and the hereafter and the doing of good deeds. And here I would also like to point out that here, apart from belief in Allah and the last day, it mentions the doing of good deeds. So, according to this verse, no person can attain this high state of having no fear nor grieving merely by believing certain things. That belief must lead him or her to do good deeds. The doing of good deeds is a part of that. And it is not merely belief in something that can make you enter heaven. Now, if we just turn through the second verse and see, does it contradict the first? The first verse. The second verse is, whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him. And in the hereafter, he will be one of the losers. Chapter 3, verse 85. Now, what is meant by whoever seeks a religion other than Islam? By a religion other than Islam is meant the extra beliefs which were added by the followers of other religions to those same fundamental beliefs which Islam teaches, which are mentioned in that verse, belief in Allah, belief in the hereafter. That in the early religions, as time passed, they added other things to those beliefs and made them more important than the fundamental beliefs themselves. And if we want to know what Islam means in this verse, whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, then just read the verse before, one verse before, verse 84. And that verse translates as follows. In that verse, Muslims are told to say to other people, we believe in Allah and in what has been revealed to us and in what was revealed to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ismail, Isaac, that's Isaac alayhi salam, Jacob, Yaqub alayhi salam, and the tribes of Bani Israel, the Israelites, and in what was given to Moses and Jesus and to the prophets, to all prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between any of them, and to God we submit, to him we submit. And these last the words of this verse are, وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ, which literally mean, and we are Muslims to God. In other words, we are submitters to God. And since in this verse 84, the word Muslim is used to mean one who submits to God, one who actually submits to God, and not just calling oneself a Muslim, it means that the word Islam in that next verse 85, which I've been discussing, can also be taken to mean submission to God. So the words which are translated as whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him. They can also be translated as, and whoever seeks a religion other than submission to God, whoever seeks a religion teaching something other than submission to God, it will not be accepted from him. And in the religions before Islam, when Islam came into the world, the religious scholars and priests of other religions had added other submissions. In addition to submission to God, they had added submission to religious figures and religious leaders. And these religious figures and leaders stood in between people and God. You had to submit to them, the priests, religious leaders. You had to submit to them in order to submit to God. And then there is also another kind of submission, which is submission to one's own desires. And all these types of submission which I've mentioned, that they came into religions before Islam, they also came into practice among Muslims. Even though outwardly Muslims appear to worship only the one God, but in reality, they too started submitting to religious figures, religious leaders, and of course to their own desires. They started submitting to those. So that is a religion in practice a religion other than submission to God. So, another thing we can say about this verse, the verse 84, whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, is that this, the verse before it, which I've just covered, that defines Islam in terms of its beliefs. I've already read the translation of that verse. It says that we believe in God, and then we believe in the revelation to all his prophets, and we make no distinction between them. And that verse goes on to say that this is what makes us Muslims. Believe in all prophets without making any distinction between them. But regrettably, the Jewish and Christian religions do make a distinction between prophets of God, because they both believe that prophets of God only appeared among the Israelites, among the Bani Israel, and in no other nation of the world. And in addition, the Christian religion made a huge distinction between Jesus and the earlier Israelite prophets, like Moses, for example, like Musa alayhi salam. They made the distinction that Jesus is unique. He's the Son of God in a unique way, and he's the only one who is sinless, and he's far above any other prophet. So when this verse 85 says, whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be one of the losers. The religion other than Islam means a religion which makes a distinction between the prophets of God. And due to making that distinction, that prophets only appeared in one nation and not others, they made their own nation superior to others. And that is the religion not accepted by God. So I'll just conclude by saying that the two verses I read at the beginning of this khutbah are not contradicting each other. The second one doesn't go against the first one. It is not that the first verse says that Jews and Christians will attain salvation just like Muslims, and the second one is saying that no, only the religion of Muslims is accepted by Allah. The first verse is saying that God accepts you if you follow certain principles, and that rule applies equally whether you are Muslim, Jew, Christian, or anyone else. The second is actually saying something similar, that if it is saying that if someone seeks a religion which corrupts and compromises those principles, then that will not be accepted by God. It will not be accepted by God that that person who corrupted those principles, or who believed in them in a corrupted sense, was right in his beliefs. And again, those who seek a religion other than Islam, a religion other than submitting to God, could be Muslims or Jews or Christians. So with that, I conclude the first part of the khutbah. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malakum barurur rahim.